Welcome to the 21st IAAF World Cross Country Championships. The venue is Amorebieta in northern Spain, not far from the big industrial city of Bilbao. This is Basque country, where cross-country running has become very popular, almost unpopular in fact, as the local sport of pelota. The championships consist of 4 races, junior, men and women, both individual and team competitions, and also senior men and women. And these 2 races are also the culmination of the IAAF World Cross Challenge, a series of cross-country races held around the world in recent months. We start with the junior women's race, and in this there are to be 119 competitors from 32 nations. My name is Peter Matthews, and with me is Tim Hutchings, himself second twice in the World Senior title. And here we look for the favourites for the junior women, Tim, the Kenyan women, aged from 13 up to 18.
Yes, just a couple of years ago in this event, Peter, we had a 13-year-old Kenyan take the title. Everybody wondering as the gun goes and sets the athletes on their way, just whether it'll be another Kenyan and indeed possibly another 13-year-old who'll win this year. Their dominance has obviously been well chronicled in men's and senior athletics, and it's now spread into women's athletics and down into the junior divisions. And it's becoming a very, very familiar scenario now, this dominance of the black Africans.
Look out for the Kenyans, yet to make their presence felt. They're just coming up on the outside here, wearing numbers in the 200 range. Also prominent in the middle there, the taller figure in the lime green of Australia is Susie Power, their national record holder at a mile. But already on the left-hand side of the picture, here they come now. Here come the young, prominent Kenyans. Look out for number 202, Pamela Chepchumba. She's only 14 years of age. Catherine Kirui, who's run some big races this year, she wears 203. Helen Mutai, winner of their trial, 204. Gladys Ondeo, 205. And Sally Barsosio, who at 14 won a world junior medal at 10 kilometres last year. She wears 201. She's in the middle of those 3. And there's the taller figure of Susie Power just behind them.
Not very much the athletes from the rest of the world can do in this sort of situation, Peter. It's what attracted me to cross-country, is the purity of the sport, if you like. The gun goes and off you go at your own pace, and when the Kenyans have decided that their pace is like this, slightly faster than the rest of the field, then you're absolutely powerless to do anything about it. And you can see this quartet here pushing along in front, much faster than the rest of the field are capable of maintaining. So often you meet athletes who come off the course after these races and say they felt as though they were sprinting the whole way. Well, these 3, it could be just another jog to high school for them.
It looks that way. Well, just picking up the numbers, number 202 Chepchumba just settling in behind 201 Barsosio and 205 Ondeo. Course is pretty fast here, quite undulating though, not quite as easy perhaps as it looks, Tim.
Well, I'd possibly dispute that slightly, Peter. I ran here 3 or 4 years ago. Several of the rises that you can see are man-made. They're actually not very big. Certainly there's no steep climbers in the course, nothing very taxing that would break up your rhythm. When I ran here 4 years ago, it was very, very flat indeed. And the surface has improved considerably since then. It looks almost like a golf course to me.
What about your expertise there, Tim? Number 205, Gladys Ondeo, 17-year-old Kenyan in the lead. So Kenyan looks sure of the team competition. There are 6 runners per team and 4 score. So already with the leading 3 and their 4th scorer not far back, they look certain to regain it. Here's Susie Power up alongside the other Kenyan, that's 204 Mutai.
Yes, she looks very much the part, Susie Power, Peter. I wonder just how well she'd be running if she had been able to go to altitude as well and actually compete perhaps with the lead athlete in this race, who is Gladys Ondeo. And this is the decisive break. She really has pushed it hard over those mounds. She's getting away from her colleagues, and I don't think she's going to be caught now.
So Ondeo coming in then to finish this race, the long grassy sweep into the finish, going to win it quite comfortably. 17-year-old Kenyan. She was further down the field in their trials, but she's obviously got it right on the day, and she's being followed by Pamela Chepchumba and by Sally Barsosio, both of whom have many years left, if they wish to choose to do so, to compete in the junior races. Though sometimes we find that the Kenyans put their talented youngsters into the senior team very early on. So coming in then to win the title as World Junior Women's Cross Country Champion. Last year there was a European victor with Paula Radcliffe from Britain, but this time, no doubt about it, Gladys Ondeo of Kenya wins it. Coming in now in second place, Pamela Chepchumba, and then Sally Barsosio, with Helen Mutai having come in fourth place, making it a Kenyan clean sweep, the lowest possible winning score there for the Kenyan team. Susie Power of Australia coming in fifth, and the Kenyan dominance, amazing here, because here comes their fifth placer. She doesn't even score, but she's sixth. Catherine Kirui ahead of Elena Kosaviano of Romania, and then Akiko Kato of Japan. And the Japanese packing well, as we see the confirmed result there, that clean sweep for Kenya. The Kenyan flags absolutely dominant. Susie Power, the best of the rest, in fifth place. Here come the rest of the Japanese team, and the Japanese team, in fact, really packing well, as they got second in the team competition.
Well, I have a horrible feeling that's going to be a familiar result sheet for the rest of the afternoon. The Kenyans totally dominating that race, as is shown on the team score. Just 10 points, the minimum possible, as Peter said, in the team competition. Japan second, and a clear second from Ethiopia. Romania, Spain and South Africa bringing up the rear.
And here are the young Kenyan ladies atop the podium, winners for the fourth time in 5 years of the junior women's title. Now we come to the junior men's race, 152 competitors from 38 nations. 7,000 meters, a little bit over that. Here are the Japanese team there. Certainly they should do reasonably well, but there's no doubt about who the favourites are going to be. It's those all-powerful Kenyans. When they first started in 1985, they were second for 3 years. They then won this title for the last 5 years. So we're getting ready for the usual cavalry charge at the start.
The World Cross Country, renowned for its fast starts, Peter. Quite often in the senior men's race, the first mile is covered in around 4:15. And it looks like this junior race is going to be pretty close to that, the way they've set out. It's obviously a good wide start, this field, for the athletes. Japanese athlete pushing to the front there. But a long, long way to go yet, although I was impressed by the winning margins of the lead athletes in the junior women's race, considering they only ran over 4.5 kilometres.
Well, that was certainly very impressive. The field got stretched out very quickly in the women's race. But look here, already the pattern beginning to become familiar. Up come those Kenyans into the prominent positions at an early stage of the race. And they've got some notable competitors amongst them, including Josephat Machuka, who was third in this race last year and who was disqualified in the finishing straight in the World Junior Championships at 10,000 metres, having already won the African senior title. He wears number 213. He's on the right-hand side of the picture. Next to him, number 214, Philip Mosima. Also prominent, number 212, Christopher Kosgei. The Kenyans are prominent, so too are the Ethiopians, just tucked in behind. And the Ethiopians and the Kenyans have really dominated both the senior and junior men's cross-country championship races in recent years, Tim.
Just to pile on the agony, there's several Moroccans up there as well, so the Africans totally dominant here, and you can see there Machuka, Mosima and Naya Karaka ahead of Abebe and Jifar of Ethiopia. That lead group, well, I can hardly see a European amongst them. Quite astonishing.
So the numbers to look out then. Josephat Machuka, they mentioned, was 213, but that's been passed. 214, Mosima, 212, Kosgei. Just with the junior women's race, it's 6 members per team, 4 to score. So already we've got certainly, well, all the Kenyans are up there, all 6 of them. There are 3 Ethiopians tucked in behind. And as you said, Tim, also Moroccan or 2. We look back, perhaps the leading European, I think, is the Russian Kasheyev. And then there's also Kevin Sullivan of Canada, who was a World Junior medalist at 1,500 metres last summer. But none of those men are really able to stay with this pace, and it really is once again stretching them out. Just look what big a lead. We just had a little glimpse then back to the rest of them as how much these Africans are stretching out on the rest of the field.
Yes, they have such an advantage over the rest of the world, Peter. They of course live and have been born and bred at altitude, but additionally they all run to school. It sounds a bit of a cliche, but a lot of these African athletes, particularly the Kenyans, run to and from school, quite often several miles in each direction. And that's perfect grounding for getting into a really tough athletic competition. When they become seniors, of course, it becomes more disciplined. But a lot of these lads will have been running many, many miles every day for years and years before the age of 15, 16.
But here's the lead taken by Tigenu Abibi of Ethiopia. Here wears 91 on the right of the screen 2:14 is Masima. On the left of the screen 2:13 Machuka. The other two Kenyans tucking in, that's 2:15 Naya Kariri and also 2:12 Christopher Kosgei in 5th place at the moment. These 5 really stretching way away from the rest of the field.
A few clashes going on there between Machuka and the Ethiopian beside him, Abebe. Machuka, I think, a very intense young man, certainly when he was disqualified from that 10,000 in the World Junior Championships in September '92. A lot of people were very, very surprised. Most of the Kenyans are very quiet and calm in nature, and they let their legs do all the talking and fighting for them.
Machuka certainly went on an amazing racing spree at one time last year. He won the African Championships at 10,000 metres, and then the same week went back to take part in the Kenyan trials at 5,000 and 10,000 Olympics. He didn't quite make that, but he's a talent to watch for the future, undoubtedly. So here's the leading group well away, and here's the next group headed by number 97, or rather 93, Habti Jifar of Ethiopia.
Easy to underestimate the speed at which these athletes are moving, Peter. I think quite a few of them will be running in the senior race next year, and indeed it's the transition the young Kenyans and Ethiopians make very, very easily indeed from the junior to the senior ranks, one which the rest of the world, certainly the Europeans, really struggle with. They don't start running well into the senior ranks until they're into their early or mid-20s.
The number 2:13, that's Josephat Machuka, who off his past form should be the favourite, I think. He's in the lead from 2:14 Philip Masima. Then we have the Ethiopian Abibi with Naya Kariri just behind, and also Christopher Kosgei, who seems to be loping along at the back of this little pack. But really, Tim, they're settling into a good rhythm here, and the winner could come from any of these 5.
It could. None of them look particularly comfortable. 2:13 on the right there. Machuka has been doing most of the work, running very, very aggressively, despite the fact he's got comrades around him. And I do feel for the Ethiopian there, Abebe, isolated really from the rest of his team. The Kenyans are renowned for working together in distance races, and I just wonder if they'll try and conjure something up here to get rid of Abebe.
They almost don't need to, of course. The team title is sewn up with 4 to score, 4 and 5. They can hardly go wrong with that, though they'd like to make it, no doubt, a clean sweep, having already seen their women do just that. Well, 2:14, Philip Masima making a bit of a break now, seems to be stretching it out. Machuka doing his best to hang on. So 2:14 it is, Masima, then Machuka, the favourite, then Abibi, then Naya Karaka and Kosgei. So making a determined bid for home, going over that undulating stretch for the last time. Masima coming into the finishing straight, Tim.
Yes, the sprint he's put on here, quite astonishing, pulling away from the rest of the field. He looks so easy too. Noticeable that both these athletes in first and second are running in bare feet. They feel a lot more comfortable with that. Indeed, they'll do most of their training in bare feet back in Kenya. But Masima here really pushing hard towards the line to try and get away from Kosgei. Great race between these young Kenyans.
So Machuka, slightly surprisingly, left behind a little bit in this bid for the finish. 2:14 Masima and 2:12 the Kosgei. But Masima now coming away. He made that first bid to come into the finish. Kosgei held on to him for a while, but doesn't seem to have any answer. Masima it is who's coming through to take the title. Kosgei coming in second place. Machuka it is who's third. And Naya Karaka makes it 1, 2, 3, 4 for Kenya. And here comes Tegenu Abibi of Ethiopia. And look at that huge gap from those first 5 back to the rest. There's the winner, Philip Masima.
It just goes to show, Peter, how a pack can draw itself away from the rest of the field. There's Rita and Jifar coming through there in 6th and 7th places for Ethiopia. Looks like they've sewn up the silver medals in the team race.
And there's the leading Spaniard, number 88, Rodriguez, alongside the Moroccan. We just come back, though, to pick up Kimutai of Kenya finishing 8th, then 2 more Ethiopians. And there is the first non-African, Venab Kashayev of Russia. So the young Kenyans celebrate once again, 1, 2, 3 and 4 in the men's race, with 3 Ethiopians behind them. Needless to say, of course, the team title went to Kenya. Ethiopia second. That makes it 5 successive victories in these championships for the junior Kenyan team. Now the senior women's race, 6,350 metres, 1 big loop and 2 small loops as shown on the diagram. This, I think, will be a more competitive race. There are certainly prospective champions from a number of countries, including, of course, the Kenyans who we saw then. Lynn Jennings, the winner for the last 3 years, though she had a recent appendicitis operation, and that certainly cost her some training time, although she did come back to win the bronze medal at the World Indoor Championships. The Australian team there, the Dutch. An interesting race to look forward to. There is the standings in the World Cross Challenge Series. Katharina McKiernan of Ireland leading from Albertina Diaz and Esther Kiplagat of Kenya. Kiplagat, one of that talented group of Kenyans there.
So the athletes waiting for the starter's gun. 6.5 kilometres, again on the short side for women. There's some talk of increasing the cross-country distances for top women athletes to around 10k, something more similar to the men's distance. This is very, very short for many of these women who may have done marathons. Indeed, Liz McColgan of Britain is training for the London Marathon, is in there hoping to get amongst the individual medals. So the start inevitably very fast yet again.
And already we see the Kenyans prominent. And also on the left of the picture there is Zola Pieterse of South Africa, who, as Zola Budd, won this title back in 1985 and 1986. And she seems confident of her form because she's gone straight into the lead. And now moving into about fifth place behind her is her teammate Ilana Meyer, the Olympic silver medalist at 10,000 metres. Fascinating race building up here, Tim.
Very much so, and the South African ingredient, of course, making it all the more intriguing. And certainly the women's race is where the South Africans have got their strength through Pieterse and Ilana Meyer. Meyer came third in the cross-challenge race at Durham in northeast England earlier on in the winter. Didn't look that impressive, actually. She was beaten by Tulu, the Olympic 10,000 metre champion, and a young Briton, Paula Radcliffe. Tulu is in this race, although we do understand she's been struggling with a knee injury.
So it's Pieterse leading. Then number 102 is Marina Denboba. Also just going through there in the picture in the green was Katharina McKiernan, the IAF Cross Challenge Series leader. There's Meyer, then Denboba, and then Paula Radcliffe of Britain just tucking in. That's number 134 behind. Lynn Jennings in the dark glasses on the outside, and just behind her Albertina Diaz of Portugal, who's got a fine record, as has Jennings, in this race in recent years. So it's Pieterse, Denboba, Meyer, McKiernan, and then Jennings on the outside.
Also up there at this stage is Farida Faites of France, and you can see Diaz of Portugal and Paula Radcliffe of Britain. So a far more representative international field, truly international field at the front of this race at this stage. But Meyer going to the front now and decided it's a bit too slow maybe. The Africans, or South Africans I should say, in first and second.
Yes, indeed, the former champion, Zola Budd, now Pieterse, and Ilana Meyer, who used to run with her but used to get well beaten, has now come through in her own right with that little dipping style there, that little head dip, Tim, a slightly strange style.
It is. I've seen other athletes do it in the past. It's something they're not aware of doing at the time. They look as though they're checking down at their feet, but it's a totally involuntary thing. And if anything, it shows that their neck and head is very, very relaxed. It's probably a good thing.
So Meyer, then Denboba of Ethiopia, who's been consistently reasonably well placed in this race in recent years, 18th in 1991 and 20th in 1992, but certainly running better than that. Then Pieterse, then Jennings, then McKiernan, then Diaz, as we look back along the field, not stretched out so much as the juniors, and indeed one would expect that, of course, at senior level, but some Kenyans also pretty prominent. Lydia Cherame, number 231, was in shot just now, and also Jane Goto.
Esther Kiplagat, I also see up there in about 8th or 9th place. Kiplagat has placed very highly in the Cross Challenge Series throughout the winter, and it'll be interesting to see just how the athletes who have participated fully in the Cross Challenge Series throughout the winter months compare with those who have stood back and watched what's going on but got on with their training, prepared specifically for this race. Certainly Ilana Meyer and Zola Pieterse have hardly participated in the Cross Challenge at all, and at the moment they're breaking away.
And Meyer, of course, has plenty of speed in her legs because she recently ran a 4 minutes 9 second 1500 metres, whereas, of course, McKiernan of Ireland, who won the Cross Challenge Series, or was leading the Cross Challenge Series, in third place there at the moment, has nothing like that speed. But again, as you say, Tim, she's well and truly prepared for cross country. But look at this, Meyer is really stretching away a bit at the moment, using that speed to good effect, though it's still fairly early stages in the race. McKiernan and Pieterse, then Diaz just tucked in behind them, and Denboba beginning to go back a little bit with Paula Radcliffe alongside her.
I'm somewhat surprised to see Maya doing this so early. There's been a lot of talk about how competitive this women's race will be. Now, if she wants to employ this tactic, she's got to be head and shoulders better than the rest, above the rest. And really, I don't think she is. She's got so much speed in her legs at the moment. I wonder if she's letting them run away with her and rule what she's doing rather than letting her head do the ruling.
Notice the way that some of the runners find the little gaps in that hedge there rather than attempting to jump over it.
Certainly Maya looking as though she's working hard there. The rest of the field just wondering whether she's going to come back. When an athlete does this, they put in a break in the middle of the race. There's nothing you can do. You've just got to sit back and hope that they come back. Occasionally, of course, and if it's usually an African or a Kenyan, they won't come back. But I know that the Irish girl there in second place, McKiernan, will be waiting for Maya to ease off from this surge.
Maya just giving a little look back over her shoulder as she went round that bend. Stretching out now, McKiernan in second place. And then Diaz in third, and they're really opening up a bit of a gap now. Fighters in fourth place there. But McKiernan holding on. The gap is not increasing, though certainly after Diaz there's then quite a big gap back to fourth place.
Well, Maya's broken up that lead bunch within the space of 2 or 3 minutes. She really has put the hammer down. The rest of them reduced to single file running. McKiernan in second, Diaz in third. They're the only ones that have really been able to respond to this surge. They've gone with Maya, and indeed, I say gone with her. They're actually closing up on her now, and Maya looking very much as though she's misjudged things. She looks under pressure to me there. She hasn't maintained that acceleration. Fighters there for France back in fourth place, but they're some way back now. Diaz is still trying to get in touch with this lead pair. Maya, has she shot her bolt?
Yes, and just coming up, we've got Helen Kamaya of Kenya, and Zola Peterse also up there again. She's now in sixth place. Well, tucked in behind Maya, McKiernan and Diaz, who finished in exactly those placings in this race last year. McKiernan was second, Diaz third on that occasion. Lynn Jennings was, of course, then the winner, and Jennings is running well. She's now up into, seventh place. So those three, they're not going away anymore, I don't think. Then we've got fighters, then the two Kenyans, that's Cheremay and I think Kiplagat, the other one. And then we've got Lynn Jennings, I think it is, just behind. Yes. Oh, and Liz McColgan also coming into the picture now, coming up on Jennings' shoulder in eighth place.
Good run by McColgan. She's worked very hard to get up to that position. She started slowly, the world 10,000 metres champion. And we understand now that Duratu Tulu, the Olympic 10,000 metres champion, has dropped out with that injury, so we won't see her at all now. But up front, it's looking very physical there as McKiernan and Diaz clash going over that rise. Maya stumbling into the back of McKiernan.
Maya particularly is going all over the place, isn't she? Obviously trying to find the best footing. Some parts of the course, obviously the footing is not quite so good as others, but she's really rocking around, whereas Diaz looks much the most fluid of those three.
Fluid and balanced, yes. Diaz looks very under control. Maya is always like this. Her arms tend to be thrown around the place, and with that head rolling around, it doesn't give the impression of fluency. But Diaz is quite a well-muscled girl up top and looks well in control at this stage. McKiernan bouncing along beside her, always runs just this way. Normally sprints away at the finish, as we've seen her do on several occasions in the Cross Challenge Series. But this is a very different type of race. The pace has been much, much faster than she's used to.
McKiernan, of course, the only one of these leading competitors who hasn't really got any sort of track pedigree, but I'm sure that must only be a matter of time, because on this sort of ability she ought to be able to run, I would have thought, a really good 10,000.
Yes, McKiernan has been running 3,000s for the last couple of years, hasn't really made an impression, and has acknowledged that this last winter, and has actually stated that this coming year she's going to be running 10,000s on the track. And as you say, Peter, I think that is where we'll really see her make a mark.
But Diaz now takes the lead, and she's really got a very fine, consistent record in this race. She was second back in 1990, sixth in 91, and third last year. McKiernan, of course, second last year, really came up, and McKiernan's the youngest of the group at 23, Diaz 29. There's Jennings, though, running well. Faites, then McColgan. So there's plenty of running in that group behind, but these first three do seem to be well away, and I would have thought that the winner is going to come from these three at this stage of the race. But now Diaz stretching it away, and then there's the gap beginning to struggle out. Paula Radcliffe, one of the early leaders, dropping back a little bit there.
Well, Diaz looking still in control here. very, very composed. This is surprising. She's only beaten McKiernan once. That was right at the beginning of the winter when McKiernan apparently had a cold at Bolbec in France, the very first cross-challenge race of the season. But Diaz in the driving seat here. Maya looks as though she really has given her all. The rest of the field closing up. Jennings there leading the fight for fourth place. And I think that battle is gradually bringing them back into touch with these three.
So Diaz and McKiernan, and Maya seems to be dropping off the pace that these first two are setting as they run through the gap. Lynn Jennings, what an amazing race she's running for someone who had an appendix operation so recently. Then fighters, then Petersea and McColgan together, and then the leading Kenyan, Pauline Conga. Diaz on the left, McKiernan on the right. Both have good sprint finishes.
Well, the last time a Portuguese took the World Cross Country title, it was Carlos Lopez in front of his home fans in 1985. And I wonder if Diaz here is going to repeat a Portuguese victory for them. Looking still in control. Maya really struggling now, and I wouldn't be surprised if she starts looking over her shoulder at her pursuers. McKiernan really determinedly hanging on to the Portuguese heels there, but it's unusual for that gap to have developed like that and for it to be closed at this stage of the race.
Diaz really looking so good, as we've commented on. She has been looking marvellous right through the race, but McKiernan is undoubtedly a fighter. Maya doing her best to stay in contention, still quite a gap back to Lynn Jennings, and then it's fighters, and then Petersea and McColgan, and then we have some more of the Kenyan challengers just behind them. Fascinating finish here, but certainly Diaz looks really good here. McKiernan holding on, opening up this gap to Maya, who really now is an isolated third.
Yes, not a good situation for Maya to be in. I think she actually entered oxygen debt in the middle of the race, though. When she put in that surge, she really overextended herself, and from that point on she's been struggling like mad to hold this pace. Diaz, well, she's judged things to perfection. Coming down this rise now, looks to me like she's pulling away from McKiernan, and good tactics by Diaz. McKiernan does have a fast finish, and she's dragging out the sting from McKiernan and trying to make it a long run for home. They do know each other so well, of course, and Diaz here using that knowledge to beat the Irish girl by the looks of things. Interesting, this situation now rising from the cross-challenge series. Going into it, McKiernan was leading Diaz by 9 points. If Diaz wins and McKiernan is second, then Diaz can only make up 6 points of that gap. So indeed, McKiernan would go on to win the overall title by 3 points.
And it's certainly looking as if Diaz is on the way to victory. She's already got a second and a third place in previous World Cross Country Championships, and McKiernan, unless she can do something very special in these last few meters, is going to have to settle for second for the second successive year. Maya, though, definitely seems to be fading, and the rest are catching her. Here's Lynn Jennings and Zola Petersea resurgent as well, as we switch back to see this smooth style of Albertina Diaz coming home, seemingly unchallengeable to a most popular local Portuguese victory. There is McKiernan, and there you can see just at the top the feet of Maya, who is rapidly being caught, and she may well lose out on third place, having been prominent for so long in this race. There's Lynn Jennings just behind her, and Jennings has obviously got Maya well in her sights. But here too comes Zola Petersea, the other South African who was doing so well early in the race, and she looks as if she too is going to take her teammate. Maya, Tim, I don't think he's got any answer to this.
No, paying the penalty here for that misjudgment early in the race. Petersea goes straight past her as Jennings wants to tuck in behind. Jennings, of course, has won all her 3 titles with a sprint finish. Well, Diaz has made sure here that there's no need for a sprint finish today. Great running by this very small Portuguese woman at the age of 27. Just reward for perseverance in the World Cross Country Championships this. McKiernan looks safe in second, but a battle royal going on back there for third.
Well, that's it. I think that's where the interesting race is now, because Diaz is really stretching away to come through the title. There's McKiernan, who seems untroubled, and she's certainly running fast enough to hold on to that second place. A real good, tough cross-country runner there. And Albertina Diaz, who has yet perhaps to add the track success to her cross-country form. That no doubt will come. She was 10th in the Olympics. She's capable of doing better, and she really is running pretty fast there as we look back down the race to the leading Spaniard, Vaquero, who's in around 15th place at the moment. And here is Diaz now, looks confidently over her shoulder, sees that she's got no challenge at all. She's coming through this long finishing straight to take the title. She'll be absolutely delighted at that. As I said, a second and a third already, and now champion. Albertina Dias of Portugal, the joy on her face for sure, and very close indeed for second place. McKiernan does hold on, the fast finishing Lynn Jennings in fourth, then Zola Petersy. And Liz McColgan just sneaks past. Maya on the line with Pauline Conga and Farida Fates coming in behind. Albertina Dias going back to congratulate McKiernan just behind her in the tunnel.
Well, that'll be a very, very popular win, as you say, Peter. Dias is a cross-country specialist. Her potential on the track remains to be realised, and I don't think she can believe that herself. 27 years old, the greatest race of her life. She's just run. McKiernan, well, second for the second year running. She must be disappointed with that. She was fated as one of the favourites for this event. Dias was certainly ignored by the media. And a great run there, I think, by Jennings in third place, who not only has had surgery this year earlier on, but hasn't been in great form in recent weeks. She took an indoor bronze medal at the World Indoor Championships over 3,000 metres, but I never expected Lynn Jennings to take a medal.
Well, there's confirmation of the result. Albertina Dias, the champion, Katharina McKiernan in second place, Lynn Jennings in third.
Dias there being mobbed by the media. Surprises galore in that event, although no surprises in the team result. Kenya yet again on top with 52 points. The Japanese having a very good championship so far. Silver medals for them with 93. France just behind in third place. And the South Africans, thanks to Maya and Petersay, who had a brilliant run there in fourth place, taking the fourth place positions in the team.
So there's the popular winner, Albertina Dias of Portugal, receiving her gold medal. Wind's got up a bit now, more than was apparent during the race itself. But, the Basque beret being put on, of course, as appropriate.
Traditional piece of Basque clothing, that, and very nice indeed, although I'm not sure that they're usually as big as that. I think they're made that size to fit on all the embroidery.
Katharina McKiernan of Ireland steps up, and although second for the second successive year, she has indeed won the IAF Cross Challenge Series, so she's had a really good winter of racing. And there's confirmation of that, with Esther Kiplagat of Kenya coming into third place, although not so highly placed in this particular race.
Well, the three medalists there on the women's rostrum for the senior race, not an African amongst them. I fear that it will not be the same in the men's race, where the Kenyans have been dominant for 7 years now. They've taken the team title, and as the men prepare there's a list of the top athletes in the World Cross Challenge. Fita Baisa, the only man perhaps who could really unsettle the Kenyan dominance, the Ethiopian who's run 4 and won 4 cross challenge races this year.
But there was the other man who might do that, Khalid Skar. And we see that Khalid Skar was the winner in 1991 and 1990. In amongst the record number of wins by John Ngugi of Kenya. Ngugi, who of course is not running this year. So let's look back down across the start there. And most unusually, in fact, we have a full start. Tim, I don't recall one of those in a championship. Were you involved in one?
I've never been involved in a full start of the World Cross Country. I've certainly seen 1 or 2, or been in 1 and 2 in Spain, where domestic races tend to be slightly short and disciplined occasionally. That's very impressive. Look at that. 4 or 5 officials spread out their arms, and the whole field stops and are returning to their pens. I don't think I've ever seen discipline like that. So congratulations to all the athletes there. The starter, I think, perhaps getting rather late to his position.
Well, this time he's ready, and the gun goes, and this time there's no problem. Off they go. The assembled ranks of the world's best distance runners from all the nations around the world. In fact, there are 45 nations represented. That's not all, but all the leading powers in athletics. 240 runners in all. And of course, we're once again looking to see the vests of Kenya and Ethiopia, who, ever since they started entering these championships in the early 1980s, have been pretty well all dominant. And already at the beginning of the race, we're beginning to see them. Let's look at some of the men to look out for in the Kenyan team, especially number 317, William Sige, who's won all 6 major Kenyan races this year. And he's already prominent, Sige, 317 on the left-hand side of the screen there. But we've also got such men as Moses Tanui. He wears 318, the world 10-kilometre champion. And indeed their depth is such that I think they could have fielded 2 or 3 teams who could challenge the rest of the world if they were able to do so. As it is, it's 9 runners per team, 6 to score. And in recent years we've seen very much the Africans dominating, not only the Kenyans but also the Ethiopians. And amongst their runners they include Addis Abibi, former junior champion of this event back in 1989. And of course we've also got Khalid Skar, who's had many battles with the Kenyans in recent races. He's starting relatively slowly at the moment.
Yes, Skar there back in about 25th place, all in red for Morocco. The battle between him and the Kenyans has been very much a war of words in recent weeks. Skar, of course, was disqualified after winning the Olympic 10,000 metres and then was reinstated and awarded his medal the following day, but received a lot of boos in the stadium in Barcelona at those Olympic Games. And there's been talk of him getting booed again here should he take the gold medal ahead of the Kenyans, but it doesn't look as though that's going to be the case, certainly as this race unfolds at the moment. The Kenyans in 1, 2, 3 there. Ismail Kirui, the young man who took the junior title last year and could still have been in the junior race today, is right in the middle of that Kenyan trio at the front of the field.
But certainly we've got some of the Europeans not that far off the pack. I saw Thierry Pontel, yes, there he is, of France, just tucking in second place at the moment behind number 314, who is Dominic Kirui. Again, one of the leading Kenyans. He's been second to Sige in most of the major Kenyan races this year. So it's Kirui leading, then Pantel, and before we have this next group of Kenyans and Ethiopians.
Well, I know there's a lot of pundits and indeed spectators here today who would like to see a European get up there amongst the Kenyans or the Africans in this championships. Certainly Pontel has the ability. On his day he's as good as virtually anybody in the world, but he has only one good race out of about every 10 starts. I just hope today is the one race when he's going to run well.
So as it is, it's Dominic Kirui in the lead, then Pontel, then Ismail Kirui, no relation, though Ismail Kirui is indeed younger brother of Richard Chilimo, and also running there next is the Ethiopian Haile Gebrselassie, who in fact took the double 5k and 10k in the World Junior Championships and of course beat Ismail Kirui to win the 5,000 metres. So those 2 juniors of last year, indeed Ismail is still a junior, prominent, but it's the other Kirui, Dominic, who's taking it on. Dominic Kirui, who was a finalist in the Olympic Games at 5,000 metres, though he was back in 14th place on that occasion. He's certainly running better than that today, and he's joined by the other Kirui. So it's Dominic, the much taller figure, Ismail, the youngster. He may be around about 18 years of age. Some sources even say 17 years of age. Whatever, he's very young and he's very good.
Well, certainly the birth date we've been given. He ran 13:15 last year, last summer at the age of 17. So if at the oldest he's 18 now. Haile Gebrselassie of Ethiopia is in 3rd place at the moment, the Ethiopian world junior champion over 5,000 and 10,000. So the youngsters in this race really letting their presence be known. And it looks now very much as though the challenge of Pontel, the Frenchman, has receded as Sige moves up into 3rd place behind the 2 Kiruis, who seem to be helping each other along here slightly, Peter.
They do indeed. The slight surprise maybe is that Sige is behind them because he's been in such dominant form this year in Kenya. He's won all their major races, not just won them, he's won them by huge margins, but he's still running pretty strongly. He's a 23-year-old. He was 8th in this race last year on his first international appearance, and he improved his 5,000 metre time by nearly 30 seconds outdoors last year. So he's an undoubted talent, comes from the Kipsigis tribe. So it's the 2 Kiruis, Dominic the taller one, Ismail the smaller one, then Sige, then still quite a big group just behind him, with Moses Tanui now in 4th place, then Khalid Skar in the red vest, and then the Ethiopians, Baisa just ahead of Abibi on the outside of Werku Bakila, who was 6th in the Olympic 5,000 metres.
The big surprise for me, Peter, is that not only Khalid Skar there in 5th place in red, struggling to stay with the pace, but so is one of the other pre-race favourites, Peter Baisa, back in 6th, the Ethiopian who's run 4 cross-challenge races this winter and won all 4. Ismail Kirui there on the left of these 2 leaders wearing 315. The youngster is currently in 3rd place in the World Cross Challenge. Now, if he can stay up there in the top couple of places in this race, then he could well win the overall cross challenge.
Well, it'll be certainly interesting to see whether Baisa is just biding his time, because he's got a redoubtable record. 3 third places in these championships before, actually, twice in the junior championships and also in the senior last year. So one would expect him, off his form and indeed that previous form, to make a bid. But at the moment he's just running there with his teammates, with Werku Bakila and with Addis Abibi, and is not really interested, it seems, in challenging these leading Kenyans. Dominic Kirui here, wearing number 314. And Tim, looking pretty good.
Yes, looking frighteningly easy, Peter. Both these two athletes in front are very fluent athletes. Sigai there in third place, who's managing to keep that gap between him and the leaders consistent, isn't a fluent athlete. He doesn't really look easy over the ground, but obviously it's effective. Khalid Skar, well, no sign of him at this stage, and that is still very surprising. He's back in that second pack. But Scar's verbal battles with the Kenyans have received a lot of media coverage in recent days, but it looks to me as though they're giving him a hiding at this stage.
There he is, number 350, Khalid Skar. It's all Kenyans and Ethiopians in those leading, 12 places, apart from one man, Khalid Skar, for the rest of the world. He too, of course, from Morocco, so it's very much an African-dominated race. Easing down the hill then, the 2 Kiruis, still Sigai somewhat 20 metres down. And well, it'll be interesting to see whether they can close the gap. In fact, Sigai is now being caught a little bit by Moses Tanui, who is again one of the men who's got a great record in this race. He was second back in 1990 and in 1991, fourth at the moment in this race, just tucking in behind Sigai.
Yes, Sigai has made incredible inroads into his personal bests in the last couple of years. 13.56 in 1991. And then improved to 13.15 last year. So world-class track runner, as are most of these men. What's different between these two leaders is that Ismail Kirui on the left has lived in London and raced a great deal on the cross-challenge circuit this winter, whereas Dominic Kirui has really stayed in Kenya and trained hard there, as has Sigai.
And these two certainly setting a very fierce pace indeed. It's stretched the field out. So we've got the 2 Kiruis, then we've got Sigai and Tanui, and then we've got the chasing group, including the man we thought, well, the 2 men we thought were the biggest threat to the Kenyans. That's Khalid Skar and Fita Baisa, and Baisa certainly is not stamping his presence on this field one jot.
Good to see Moses Tanui, the World 10,000 champion, move into third place there. He's been based in Italy for the last couple of years. Hasn't been particularly happy with his form, but has peaked very much for this race and is determined to defend his title in Stuttgart this summer. And it looks like this is going to be Tanui's best run for a while. There's Skar, all in red, leading this chasing pack, but a long, long way down now on those first 4. And certainly under some pressure, Skar, who won in 90 and 91.
Yes, the other 2 Kenyans we haven't mentioned who are in that chasing pack, that's the 5th and 6th Kenyans, that is Ezekiel Bitok and Paul Turgat. Bitok, a former African 5,000 metre champion, and Turgat, who came from seemingly nowhere to win the Kenyan championships at cross country last year. But the leading 4 places still the same as they have been for quite a time now. And here's this group with Baisa beginning to drop back, and in fact Gebri Selassie, the top Ethiopian there, he wears number 137.
Khalid Skar looks very unhappy there, the Moroccan. He's been in great form this winter indoors, ran 7:39 for 3,000 metres, one of the fastest times ever recorded. But it appears today he just doesn't have the strength to go with this pace, although he may have the speed. Certainly these 4 well away, and 1, 2, 3, 4 from Kenya.
And of course tactics coming into it. The Kenyans obviously always do run as a team. They prepare as a team. They regard these World Cross Country Championships as perhaps the most important event in the athletics fixture. They go away and they work together at altitude. They'll obviously have worked out the tactics here. No way will they want the race to be so slow as to play into the hands of such a renowned kicker as Khalid Skar. So these 2 men making absolutely sure that it's fast, which is just what the Kenyans want. And look at that, they are well ahead. Then the next 2, Sigai and Tanui, and got an even bigger gap to that chasing group of about 6 people.
Yes, Dominic Kirui and Ismail Kirui, of course, both back in the Kenya at the training camp over the last few weeks, as we see an Italian there who's dropped out of the race. The Kenyans have a very, very well established system. After their trials some 4 or 5 weeks before the World Championships, the top 15 athletes go away to a training camp, and from those 15 the team is selected. Skar, very much an individual, though he has 1 or 2 training partners, likes to do his own thing, spends his time flitting backwards and forwards between Norway and Morocco, and while it doesn't seem to have worked for him on this occasion.
It's interesting to note that Dominic Kirui has been raising his hand from time to time. There's certainly some signals going on between the runners and possibly some coaches on the infield as well.
That's right. I think the Kenyans have built up so much confidence now with their victories in this race over the last few years that they can actually run the race tactically, if you like. They can plan before the event exactly what they want to do. And this does look very much like a predetermined race unrolling before us here. The two Kiruis out in front. Sigai back in third place. Tanui, well, I'm not sure if this was planned. He's running up behind Sigai here, trying to go with the leaders. But it does look as though Dominic Kirui, so easy out in front, is going very much to something that was planned.
And then we come to the Ethiopians. This is Addis Abibi now from Gebri Selassie, and then Werku Bakila, and then the other Kenyans, Turgat and Bitok just behind. But this almost seemingly effortless running by these Kiruis going on as we look back down the field. Here's a lapped runner, of course, as Kirui comes up past him.
Well, another African, but it doesn't seem to have benefited him in quite the same way it has the Kenyans.
Rather different conditions, of course, in Zaire as there is in the highlands of Kenya and Ethiopia. Not conducive to fast distance running, I think, Tim.
I think that's right, Peter. A lot of people have sort of played down the altitude factor in the Kenyan or the Rift Valley athlete success, which of course includes the Ethiopians, but to me it makes all the difference. They train very, very hard, but with the altitude as well, it gives them a huge advantage.
Well, we see those three Ethiopians there, and Fita Baissa has dropped back, so one of the favourites is definitely not going to be in contention, because those three Ethiopians are Addis Abibi, Werku Bakila and Haile Gebri Selassie.
Very strange that. I don't know what's wrong with Baissa today. He won the 5 Mills race in Italy, the last cross-challenge race before the World Championships, only 3 weeks ago, and looked absolutely superb in that. But something's gone wrong between then and now.
Well, now certainly the two Kiruis have got it right on the day. Still Dominic, and Dominic's been dominating most of the race. He's been leading most of the way, Ismail tucking in behind. And Sigai still stretching a little bit away from Tanui, so really having to work hard now. He's rather isolated in fourth place, but there's still quite a gap between the Kiruis and the favourite Kenyan, Sigai, as they're coming into the latter stages now of this race.
Sigai looks to me here as though he's beginning to work a bit harder. Dominic Kirui so relaxed. The reason for that is he ran 13:17 last year for 5,000 metres, was fourth in that thrilling Olympic 5,000 metres final, where Dieter Baumann of Germany took the gold medal, of course. That was a bit of a snub for the Kenyans. They like to think the distance events belong to them, as indeed this one is belonging to them today. But Dominic Kirui had to finish outside of the medals there. Looks to me like he's going to take a medal here today.
Certainly does. I think it'd be very surprising if Moses Tanui or anyone else were to come past him, as these Kenyans are really stretching away now from the field. A look back over the shoulder there from the younger Kirui, Ismail, who's still a junior, remember, and this really is a remarkable performance by him, as this pace is too much for some of the runners.
I think that's the problem at these championships. If you commit yourself and try and go with the pace early on through the first half of the race, a lot of the athletes go way, way out of their depth physiologically, and they can end up in that sort of state by the halfway stage. I've seen it happen many times. Indeed, I've been reduced to stopping and touching my toes because of a stitch myself in the World Championships.
Well, as you can see there, Sigai is closing the gap on the two Kiruis. The Kiruis looking behind them, and Sigai is with them. Well, he's certainly made up a lot of ground there. Tanui still that isolated fourth place, and it's Sigai now with the Kiruis. Well, such is his race record, of course, this year. I think it's 6 out of 6 in major races in Kenya, as once again they go past lap runners, and the lap runners must wonder what on earth is hitting them, as I think these people go past them at very, very much greater speed.
Well, all standards catered for in the World Cross Country Championships. It's a 2-kilometre lap, but certainly half-decent runners shouldn't be lapped by these lead Kenyans. Sigai has moved up to these men, and interestingly, Ismail Kirui was looking over his shoulder 2 or 3 minutes ago. It's almost as though these two Kiruis have eased off to allow Sigai to catch them. Certainly he's closed that gap very quickly, within a matter of 90 seconds or so.
Yes, he was no doubt the man they expected to win, and one wonders, of course, to what extent the Kiruis were in fact setting the pace for him as much as anything else, because if you look at the margins of victories he's had in his races in Kenya, he's the one they would certainly have said, well, he's likely to be the champion, likely to the man we want to succeed John Ngugi, the 5 times winner of the title.
Well, conditions just about perfect for this race. They had their Kenyan Championships when the temperature was 30 degrees. Of course, it was in Nairobi at about 6,000 feet. Here they're virtually at sea level and the temperature some 12 or 14 degrees. So perfect running for these Kenyans, a beautiful course, and they've taken advantage of it. That's Haile Gebrselassie there leading the chasing group, but way, way back behind these three.
Still a pretty good start for Gebrselassie, who's moved up from the junior ranks, though it does look as if the order will be reversed from last year's junior race when, or rather the junior track race, I should say, when Gebrselassie beat Ismail Kirui, who is the smaller of these three Kenyans now, really running abreast for the finish. It'll be fascinating to see which one comes through to win this.
Well, all three side by side there. Ismail Kirui on the right, Dominic Kirui in the centre, and certainly at this stage Sigai looks to be struggling in the background as they cross the road and come into the home straight. Dominic Kirui, the man with the speed, the biggest and most powerful of these three, seems to be getting away.
And Moses Tanui is still running his isolated race in fourth place, but just ahead of him the action is happening because Sigai is going away from them, but there's quite a battle on between the 5th to 8th, but here he is. Sigai has broken away from the Kiruis, and it looks like William Sigai is going to come through to win this race for Kenya, with Dominic Kirui, who led most of the way, coming in, raising his hand in second place and pleased with his day's work. As we look down the field at Martin Feith, the leading Spaniard there, well, he's down in around about 15th place, I think. Those three Kenyans have gone through. Sigai from the two Kiruis, then Tanui, then Bitok, then Scar, then Gebrselassie, Addis Abibi. It's a Kenyan and Ethiopian show, all right.
Domingos Castro coming home, they're just ahead of Fizz of Spain, the first two Europeans. Good run by the Portuguese and the Spanish athletes there, but total dominance by the Africans. There's Fita Baissa in the red shorts, very disappointed man, and behind him Pontel, the Frenchman, who held on very well indeed in those closing kilometres. But the Kenyans, well, what can you do about them? Thumbs up there for them.
So Sigai the winner, Dominic Kirui was second, Ismail Kirui third, Kenyans 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And importantly, Fita Baissa back in 16th place, and that means that he's lost the chance of winning the IAF cross-country challenge for the year, which goes to Ismail Kirui, and Dominic Kirui third, with Baissa in second place. So William Sigai, the world cross-country champion, and on the podium it's a Kenyan 1, 2, 3.
Some surprises in the individual events, but 1, 2, 3, 4 in the team competition for the Kenyans. Every single title to them. Only Albertina Diaz in the individual spoiling the party for them. Next year, the championships moves to Budapest in Hungary, where the Europeans have a chance to get it right again. But for now, from Amorebieta, goodbye from Peter Matthews and myself, Tim Hutchings.